G'day everybody. We just wanted to, Chris and myself today, just to introduce today's episode as quite a significant one. Um, Earlier this week, there was a tragic event in Queensland where some police officers were ambushed and essentially murdered, two of them, Constable Rachel McCrow and Constable Matthew Arnold, followed by a neighbour, Mr. Alan Dare. And there was two surviving officers of Constable Randall Kirk and Constable Keeley Brough, who was incredibly brave in circumstances that I can't even comprehend. The reason we wanted to intro this one is because it's a stark reminder of the challenges that our emergency services face and never knowing what they're going to be confronted with. I'll hand over to Chris to say a few words as well shortly, but the aftermath after such an event in amongst the Queensland Police Service and probably police and emergency services nationwide has probably felt very closely as one of their colleagues and friends. Life has been tragically taken short. So today's episode is all around police services and what they're faced with and how they deal with that mentally. And I imagine that these officers that have survived and the ones that have been involved in the aftermath will have some process to go through over the coming weeks, months, and possibly years. So I'll hand over to Chris and see if he has a few words.
Yeah. Obviously, it's a very somber feeling. We have a couple of friends that are in the police service, and it doesn't matter whether they're in Victoria or New South Wales. That doesn't matter. It affects them like a death in the family, and rightly so. I remember growing up as a kid, I always wanted to be a police officer. I really did, and I thought that was the path that I was going to go down in life. But I got to a certain age where I thought about it, and I wasn't strong enough, and I accepted that I couldn't go out and do what these guys and girls do every day of the week. What happened during the week is a stark reminder that we don't know what people are dealing with. We don't understand that the mental state that people are in, and clearly this event is a very, very devastating event for everyone involved. I mean, the community itself, I understand it's a small country town, and a few people I've spoken to, they know the area. They've either driven through it or they've visited, and they do know it's a very small community. But this is going to take some time for it to soak in and really come to terms with what's actually happened. I just hope and I pray that the support is there, not only for the officers in that area or the first responders in that area, and I should say that it's first responders because, as we sort of spoke about before, it's the ambulances and the rescue crews and everyone that attended is going to be affected by this for a very long time. So I'm just hoping that there's resources there available and that, our messaging here is that, speak up, go and talk to someone. We know dealing with grief in the family or passing in the family, how hard that is. I couldn't imagine, someone that you're putting the uniform on to stand aside. And look, I don't have any words for it. I'm still trying to, I guess, process it all. You keep getting little bits of information, which I think could potentially make the situation worse because you sort of want to deal with it and process it all, but every day you're hearing something. I mean, I heard yesterday, or I saw yesterday online, they posted a video online, people seeing that.
Well, thankfully, a lot of news agencies didn't post the video, which I think was important.
Yeah.
But you're right, it's an ongoing bits and pieces of information being released that some people are reliving. And you mentioned before that we've got friends and family in the police force, and I've got family in Queensland, friends in Queensland that are in the police force, and my mind went straight to them. What if it was them?
So
and um, so it's hit really hard and how important their work is. And you rightly said, all emergency services that attended that scene will be processing that for some time, I think.
yeah, and even people that I won't say live by the law, but have respect for authority and understand how it works, and you raise your kids to have respect for authority and police and ambos and fireys, and it's hard when you see it on your news and your kids see it and they go, "What happened there?" You know, who's the bad guy? You know, it's really hard. I just can't imagine what it'd be like being in a workplace. I mean, if it happened at my work, if something like that happened, it's devastating. I can't imagine what it'd be like for these guys. They have to go to work the next day. They have to put on a uniform. They have to go out and deal with other stuff that's going on. You know, and I'm very passionate about this, and in particular with the police because I wanted to be a policeman. But you know, I can't even imagine what they're going through. I really can't. And we thought it was really important to um, uh, talk about this today before the episode because the plan for this episode that we spoke about and was one of the very very early stages of the podcast idea that I said to Chris, you know, like we want first responders and we want to do something around Christmas because around Christmas everyone's in holiday mode, off with their families doing whatever. These people responsible for keeping law and order and being first responders to car accidents and fires, um, they have to do it. There's no break. They just have to keep going and going and going. The point to this is, you know, we hope that this touches a few people in that community, if not in the police force, through our connections and our hearts go out to the families, but also the neighbour as well, which I'll get you to touch on that, Chris. But everyone involved in the community, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to be a tough one to swallow. This one.
Well, the poor neighbour, Mr. Alan Dare was his name, is what I've got written down here. And from what has been released, is the poor bloke was just going to investigate a fire for his neighbour. He was trying to help,
Yeah,
you know, and his life was taken by people that I can't even comprehend
yeah,
what was going on,
yeah.
and the scenes that unfolded. And
You know what gets me about what you just said? How didn't people know? How people like how didn't family know? How didn't someone know? And how wouldn't they
but would they
report
know
it?
that it was to that extreme? I mean, this is extreme, right? This is
Yeah, but they would have had to buy those guns, right? They would have had to plan it. They would have had to do all this stuff. I just this is the part, and it's about mental health as well. Like, what were these people thinking? What got them to this state? And I don't want to talk too much about them because it's not about them, but
no, it's not. No.
I just think family members and people out there that if you do see any odd behaviour or anything, it's got to be treated seriously. It can't be swept under the rug or just said, you know, they're just the neighbours are a bit crazy or whatever. It can't. It can't. You gotta report it all. It's the world we live in, unfortunately, and that's just the way it is.
Mm. Well, as I said, I feel for the police. I feel for the emergency responders, ambulance, detectives, fireys that would have attended, and all the aftermath. And verbally, I want to wrap my arms around you all, and you know, encourage you to seek out any support. Don't ignore it. You know, the whole episode today is about that and the difficult things that you all see throughout your careers. Um, and as I said, as you get into the episode, you'll hear a bit more. And it was just very unfortunate timing. We did talk about briefly before this whether we scrap the episode altogether out of respect. But I think it is a very stark reminder that there's some challenges going to be faced here from everybody, community as well. And we want to encourage you to speak up, speak out, speak to your friends, family, professionals, whoever you feel comfortable with. Don't ignore it. There will be times that will be very difficult, but stay with it, stay the course, and look after yourself.
Yeah. exactly what you said. Please seek help if you need it.
Thank you for joining the podcast for Beyond the Banter. Before we get started, you need to know some important information. If you need support immediately, please reach out to one of the following organisations. Lifeline on 131114, Beyond Blue on 1300224636, or Men's Line Australia on 1300789978. If your life is in danger, please call 000 immediately. G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Banter. You've got myself here with Topher and Chris, co-hosts and co-founders of this, and we're really looking forward to introducing you to some lads today from the emergency services, all working in the police force, and yeah, they've got some pretty incredible stories that I'm sure they'll share with us. Obviously, we're heading into the Christmas period, and I thought it was really important that we talked about the mental health in the police service and how that can impact them. So we've got Blake joining us today. We've got Matt and we've got Hoppy. He prefers the nickname, so I'm not sure. Wonder which we'll learn where Hoppy comes from. But I'm guessing it's pretty simple. But I'm hoping there's a deeper story there that's a bit more funny. But look, we'll get into it.
Yep.
I know Hoppy himself's got a pretty incredible story. He's doing a heart-to-heart walk, which I believe is all around emergency services personnel and mental health in emergency services. So, Hoppy, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for joining us. We're looking forward to hearing about it. So, get straight into it. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the walk heart to heart.
Yeah, well, I'm discharged from the police after 33 years, and I started in 87 and went through until 2 years ago in 2020. I finished up. Quite a lengthy career, but just got a bit too much at the end and decided enough was enough. So
it's a long stint.
2020, that would have been in the peak of COVID too, I'd imagine. So
yeah, it was just before COVID. I finished up in February 2020. So I was probably a good time to finish up.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So tell us a bit about heart to heart and why it's important to you.
Yeah, well, a few weeks ago, an ex-workmate of Matt and ours, Paul Batista, he contacted me and asked me if I wanted to be a part of it. And a guy, a sergeant from the AFP, has come up with the idea to walk from the centre of Australia, the geographical centre of Australia, through to Canberra. The reasoning behind it, the objectives is firstly to raise awareness of mental health and well-being of all first responders. Back in 2019, there was a Senate inquiry into mental health, suicides, PTSD amongst all first responders, and that was in 2019. As of this time, the 14 recommendations, none of them have been implemented. So it's we're asking for a commitment from the federal government to implement all 14 recommendations. And then further, there's another thing is to get the raise funds during the walk to undertake academic research into obtain further empirical evidence in relation to the impacts upon the first responders, and explore meaningful and positive educational opportunities for first responders, past and present, and families, and to basically better support them all.
I'm shocked that none of that's been passed through yet. So how long did you say it was? 2 years?
2019 was the Senate inquiry, and I think the finding came out at the start of 2020. So it's been since it's finished, it's been close to 3 years.
And this is not just for the frontline responders. This is for the people that answer the phones and everything, right?
The whole idea, any police, fire, first responders, ambulance, anyone who's involved in those industries, for a better word, it's sort of to help anyone who's having problems, and it's a big problem. There was a female constable committed suicide last week and had been off sick with PTSD. So it's far too common, and unfortunately, nothing's been done about it.
Look, PTSD is a good point there. I mean, I'd imagine amongst emergency services that some form of PTSD would be quite prevalent. There's some of the stuff you go to.
Look, if even if you break it down a little bit, if you're personally involved in an accident or some sort of circumstance, you're going to have PTSD on that. I couldn't imagine having to do it over and reliving it over and over and over. I'm actually blown away that those recommendations haven't come to light. I really am. I'm actually going to look into that, and I'm actually going to do a bit of research on myself, because I find that I'm gobsmacked by that.
Some of these Senate inquiries do take a long time, don't they?
Yeah, but this
unreasonably long.
Yeah, but this is the front line.
Yeah,
we're not talking. This is really important. Yeah. Anyway, shocked by that.
Look, let's move on to a slightly different person, and you've known this person for a while, so I'm not sure whether it's how many stories you're going to share between the two of you, but let's head over to Matt and just have a quick chat to Matt. Welcome, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Matt, touching on what Hoppy was saying before, I mean, you're involved in emergency services as well, and through the police, and how does this sort of stuff affect you when you hear those sort of the numbers that so many people are having mental health issues in amongst the force, amongst colleagues and friends?
Yep. No, it's shocking, and like Hoppy and I have worked together for a very, very long time, and you don't get to pick the jobs that you go to. I mean, something happens, you just have to go. You don't get to say, I'll sit this one out. And you're right, you can't unsee something that you've seen. And it's those types of jobs that stay with you, because unfortunately we have to go, we do it, and you just can't unsee it. It's just there forever.
So when you go home, how do you unwind and debrief yourself?
Well, it's good to have family support. Fortunately, some people don't have that family support, and I think that's important. You've got to be able to go home. You've got to just unwind and just not think about it. And I know that's hard, but when your head's full, sometimes you just need to just try and clear your mind. And whether you go for a walk, go for a ride on your bike, you just have to really concentrate on clearing your mind before you actually go home, because you don't want to get home and be upset with the family. It's not their fault, but you've just got to learn to clear your mind.
That would be extremely difficult.
Yeah. And Blake, welcome as well to yourself, and thank you for taking part. You're involved in the police as well, as I said, and we're heading into Christmas time, so a lot of these stories are quite prominent around this time of year as we lead into that period where people are travelling more, taking holidays. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what further to what Matt and Hoppy have shared.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. So I've a little bit of a different sort of version of the story. I've done two different emergency services, both fire and police now. I've been in the police coming up 9 years, so nowhere near as long as Hoppy. I'm in a very busy area, one of the busiest in the state, and starting to get to that point where, at this time of year where our calls for service just go through the roof. And like Matt said, it's really important to sort of unwind before you get home so that you're not exposing your family to it, because realistically, as a civilian, they can't comprehend what you've seen, and it takes its toll. It's something that sort of sneaks up on you, quietly. And if you're not on top of it, if you don't have those routines in place or those support networks in place, it can really catch you out. I've had quite a few mates who are currently on sort of stress leave from PTSD, and it's a long road to get back. Once you've broken, it's a really hard road to recover from.
Yeah, I mean, PTSD, we were talking about this the other day. We think that's one of the biggest concerns, or the biggest growth in a mental health situation. And we spoke about this sort of offline and said we really want to focus on this for next year, because we feel that it's a very big problem, and we knew that there wasn't enough done for it prior to doing this. But again, hearing this has just echoed that, and yeah.
So we all three of you have talked about support, and mentioned having a close support network of family. How do you extend that out? I mean, I know when I don't go to the events that you guys go to, and whether it's police or fire or especially ambulance, but I've worked in some pretty remote locations, and I've seen some things firsthand and been the person that's called you guys, right? So I know what I've seen, and I know what it's difficult. So when I go home and I debrief my family, I probably don't tell them everything, right? So there's still a bit you keep to yourself. But how do you really get that release? Like, what do you do differently? I mean, Matt, you mentioned running, and I know you're an avid runner, and you must be close to 50 Ks a day now. But,
yeah, mate, I'm an athlete. And I do the 20K bike ride as well, and I don't mind swimming about 5Ks either. So, look, I am an athlete.
Yeah, I can tell. And
that's a future episode. We need an athlete, so we might get you on with a different name.
But obviously, talking about it is what this whole podcast is about, and you guys coming online is really important. But I want to understand how you communicate that, and how you decide which information to share and which one's not. And is it just your family, or is there friends, or is there professional support that you hunt out to debrief that you don't want your family to know?
I don't think over my whole career, other than a few phases, was there any major support? Like you'd get questions asked after some critical incidents if you're okay by an inspector, but a lot of the time it was just a tick and flick sort of scenario. There was occasions when they used to. There's been probably 2 or 3 times I was present when they did group debriefs with different people. But I know Matt and I experienced that quite half the time they'd be doing a debrief, and we'd still be out doing the job with the deceased person or something like that. So probably the ones that needed it most, we were too busy working, and some of the people on the peripheral all got debriefed.
That's right. There was a couple of times where we were actually still doing the job, and they were having their debrief, and we're still doing what we were doing. But going back to, because Hoppy and I worked together for 10 years in what we did, it was good that we knew one another personally. So I could always have Hoppy's back and he would have mine, and we had that relationship where if things were tough, we would just go for a drive the next day. We would go and have a coffee. We would just not think about that job and live the life, and just do something that was relaxing, and just took away that edge that, as Hoppy said, that we were just at this job all day, not really being supported, and just to be able to do something together, it was good, and I think that helped us a lot to work and do what we did for so long.
Well, that's exactly what we talked about yesterday, right? We talked about that yesterday with mateship, and just having that one buddy that you can call on at any time, and you have almost like a verbal contract that's okay. Sorry, Blake, I heard you there. Do you want?
Yeah, mate. I was just going to say, I think for me personally, I've just my friends network has sort of shifted. I've got obviously a lot more friends within the job as opposed to civilians anymore because it's just difficult to relate, and it's not just work. It's the lifestyle that you live, the shift work and stuff like that. You're missing events on weekends because you're on night shift or kids' birthday parties and stuff like that. And slowly but surely, to no fault of anyone, but you start to drift apart from those people that you normally sort of hang around. So your friends network definitely starts to change to those work colleagues that you know. So then you have that ability to talk to them a little bit more. But there is still a lot of stigma. I don't know about the other guys, but my service, it's still a lot of stigma around mental health. A lot of people keep things bottled up because they don't want to be deemed as broken.
Well, I think it's we were talking to another guy, and it comes back to you don't want to be perceived as weak and vulnerable, right? You need to. The idea is that if you keep it to myself, I feel like I present that I'm keeping it together. I'm tough and I can cope and I'm okay. But you're kind of holding it on, and talking up is probably stronger. Now, Blake, if you don't mind me staying with you for a little bit, your partner's in emergency services as well. So how do you keep that distance between both of your stories, or do you talk about it more, or do you go home and don't talk about it at all? Like, what happens there?
No, I think we're lucky in that we both work in the same service, same location. So we're both sort of acutely aware of what we're facing on a daily basis. We're open about it and we talk about it, but we also don't. You pick up on the signs. You know that if someone just needs a moment to themselves and they need to switch off, we just leave it alone, because there are certainly some jobs that take a little bit longer to process. Being a male, we sort of seem to shut down a little bit and sort of internalize it. And thankfully, she's understanding of that. So it makes my life a hell of a lot easier because I can just say, look, I had this job. She understands immediately what the job was, what processes I've had to go through, and she can keep an eye out for any sort of warning signs if I'm struggling.
And for me and for yourself, I mean, I work in sales. I sell infrastructure to customers. And for me, if I have a shit day or bad day or whatever, I can go home. I can say, okay, well, tomorrow I'm going to, look at what I did and change or try and correct an error or whatever. But with emergency service in general, some of these things will drag on for weeks, months, correct me if I'm wrong, even maybe years if it's, full on. So it's not like you can just go home and go, okay, well, that's it. That's finished. Or for me, if I've misquoted or I've done something with a customer and go, okay, well, I'll get this quickly fixed or whatever, that problem can go away. And that's why it's so important to make sure that there's enough help and assistance out there, especially with emergency services.
I'm going to come back to you, Hoppy, but I've got a question to Blake and Matt first, because they're at different stages with kids. Now, Blake, you've got very young kids heading into this Christmas period. How does being in the force and even being a fire before, how does that impact you when you're raising your kids and your parenting style?
Look, I try and turn it into a positive. It's a bit of a cliche, but not taking every day for granted, making the most of that opportunity with the kids. The toughest jobs that I've been to have involved children, and those hit really hard. Going to a job, putting on that face at that moment of somebody's worst moment in time, and then taking it home and trying not to relate it back to your own kids is really difficult. I probably use them as much as they use me. Nothing fixes a bad day better than a nice hug at the end of the day. Thankfully, they're probably too young to understand some of the struggles of the world at this stage. That will change very quickly, I'm sure. But yeah, I just try and stay in the moment, try and be appreciative for what I've got, because it can go so quickly. And
congratulations, Blake. You've got another one on the way.
Thank you. Didn't learn the first two.
Oof, three. I was just going to say Matt, I don't know if you had any to add there, but I was just going to say through our time over the last couple of days, the thing that I've sort of said is that So for myself, I suffer from anxiety. I've had issues just accepting it and working with it. I hadn't had an episode prior to having kids. So I've got a 6-year-old girl in December and a 4-year-old boy. And what I found was with this latest one that I went through in the start of the year was that the kids were the best medicine for me. They got me through the way I was, and as soon as I sort of saw them in the morning or put them to bed or whatever, there was such a overwhelming feeling that they're helping you and they're getting you through this, and they're so young they don't understand what's going on. But I could imagine that could sort of fit in as well as when you've had a bad day and you're going home, that you've got that kids that will help you through it, even though they sort of don't know what they're.
Well, Matt actually has teens, and one of them has just got the learners. And this is why I wanted to come to you, obviously talking about that Christmas period. Obviously being in the police force, there would be a lot of accidents, I'd imagine, that you would be attending. Or, how does that, when you're in that sort of situation, how do you instill that safety message into your kids?
Yeah, you're right. It's hard work. My daughter's driving, and majority of the work that Hoppy and I did was fatalities in car accidents, and it's when you're driving with the trust in your daughter who's a learner, it is hard, but it can be good, and it can be positive, because I can tell her the repercussions of what can happen with just a simple distraction, just to keep her, concentrating, because it only takes a second of inattention and the car's on the wrong side of the road. So it is hard, you're right, but really, you've still got to be able to let them make mistakes and hopefully catch them. And life is about making mistakes and learning from them. You just don't want it to be a mistake that ends in tragedy.
Yeah. I think too with the kids growing up with parents in emergency services, doesn't take them long to realise the real world, and they're not growing up with unicorns and rainbows and lollipops. I'd get called out in the middle of the night, as Matt would, and I'd get home, and the kids, because my kids were young when I first got to Cooma, all of them, and they'd say, "Oh, did someone die, Daddy?" And you'd say, "Yeah, they had an accident," and they knew there was death sometimes. It wasn't as though they didn't really think about it, because they knew that to get called out at night, something serious had happened. So it was a good grounding for them to know that, well, death is part of what happens with members of the public.
And you didn't try to...
Driving is dangerous.
Yeah. And you didn't try to... I mean, obviously you didn't go into detail, I'd assume, but you obviously didn't try to shield it from it completely and pretend everything was okay. You were a little bit honest with them pretty early.
Yeah, that's it. You didn't try to honest. There was even one occasion coming back from holidays where my wife's a nurse, and we were both helping out at a head-on collision scene until the other people turned up, because we just happened to come across it. And the kids just sat in the car. They knew Mum's a nurse and Dad's a police officer, and we did what we needed to do until reinforcements came.
It's very full on, isn't it, hearing it? I wanted to shake things up a little bit, and this is a question for all three of you. Why do you guys do it? Hoppy, obviously, why did you do it? Start with you, Blake. Well, why do you guys do the job that you do?
I was hoping you wouldn't start with me.
You're trying to steal their answers.
Cut that.
Yeah, absolutely. I just concur with what they say. Look, there's the cliche answer of, we want to genuinely help people and stuff like that. And it is still true. I enjoy helping people. I enjoy the variety of the work. I'm not an office person, so I go crazy staring at four walls all day. This job gives me the ability to get out there and, make a difference on a day when it's probably the worst day of their lives. Most people don't call police to have a chat. They're either against us or something has gone terribly wrong for them. So turning up, staying calm, and just sort of guiding them as best we can through whatever the scenario is. I'm general duty, so I get to see a little of everything. I haven't specialised in any unit yet, so I like the diversity in it. That's why I do it.
All right.
Matt?
Well, like Blake said, it's all about helping the people that need help. It's about responding to an incident, trying to mitigate the danger. It's all about being there for other people, and I think that's what it's all about. Being an emergency service worker is that you're there for other people. You're getting paid to help people, and you've got to be that sort of person to put your personal feelings behind you and concentrate on what's in front of you. And it's only at the end of it that you go, what just happened? And being trained, knowing what to do, helps you get through it. So yeah, it is. I've actually specialised and got away from what Blake was doing in general duties and those types of jobs. I'm now more of an office worker. My job, though, is still about helping people. It's still about making a difference and going to do what I do every day to make sure people who can't, who want to be helped, just to help them. And so that's what it's all about, being there and helping people.
And Hoppy, you did it for 30-odd years, that's a long time.
Yeah, that's it. Well, as you predicted, these other two have just stolen all the key cliches. I'll veer away from those. But I think the best thing is, I think Blake touched on it, the variety of work. Like in my time, I worked in the city, I worked in the country, did boat duties, snowfield duties, anything from all sorts of different sorts of jobs. And a lot of it is that the helping people definitely makes it worth when you've done something to help someone along. Because as was I think said there somewhere, was that we always see people. No one rings. Very rarely do you get a phone call from someone who's happy and just wants to have a nice happy chat. It's always something's bad. Someone's had something stolen. Someone's had a death in the family. Someone's been robbed or injured, and it's always people's heartache. We're sort of your investigators, your counsellors, your all sorts of roles you fill when you're doing the job, and that was good having that variety and enjoying different scenarios along the way.
I don't expect you guys to answer this, but a question for you is, I see this stuff on social media these days with people filming police and making their life difficult, not undoing windows and doing this sort of stuff, and I find it so cringe because, they don't see the other side or the 95% of the other side of it. And when I see these videos and, I just look at them and I go, why? What? I was brought up that if the police ask you a question, you answer. You do what you do and you cooperate and that's it. And I see some of these videos and just asking for a simple license or something like that, they just make their life so difficult.
Especially during COVID. I mean, I can't imagine it's the stupidity of people making somebody doing their job so hard. And it's like they want to catch them out of a mistake. I don't know why. These guys, these guys and ladies that are doing this stuff day in and day out, are dealing with pretty bad stuff.
Yeah.
And you want to film them and try and catch you guys out on something pathetic.
Yeah.
Like that probably drives me more nuts than you guys maybe, but
it's so cringe.
So cringe. Social media's got a lot to answer for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Allowing that sort of sharing.
Yeah, for sure.
And they're not legal eagles. They don't even know what they're talking about half the time, and they don't know the laws.
They're spouting some constitution from 1428, in Scotland or something. Like, for God's sake.
I just find it. Obviously, you've got troublemakers out there that will go out and try and do it for the likes on social media and all that sort of stuff. But I just find it, appalling. And I've got the two young kids, and I always tell them, whenever we go to a show or something like that, and there's a emergency services stand there or anything like that, I get them to go up and because that's what we did as kids, and that's why the way I think about things is, you guys are the first person we call when something goes wrong. You guys are the first person we call, and
all those people being idiots, right? I bet they still call you when they have something go wrong.
Of course
and expect it.
Absolutely.
Of course they would. Anyway, enough of that. I got another question. I'm on a roll. Have you guys made any friends from situations that you've been involved with where you're helping them through something? So maybe, situations come up and, you've dealt with it and the family or whoever it is has dealt with it. But is there any connection there with people after you guys are dealing with some of the stuff you deal with?
Yeah, definitely. Along the way, you're sort of like you've helped someone through a really hard time, heartache, and when everything's done and dusted, they're very grateful of your efforts to help them, and it definitely makes them a closer friend to you than just being someone in the community who you didn't particularly have much to do with before.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, and majority of people, or I should say, good, hardworking, honest people don't have interactions with emergency services. So, for example, my parents have always worked. They've not had many interactions apart from being pulled over on the side of the road. So, although we might see dozens of faces every day, they only see one or two police officers in their lifetime. So they definitely take sort of a liking or a shining to you if you've done a good job. And I think it's a an emergency service thing that you take pride in your work. There are some out there that don't, but I definitely take pride in my work, and I think people appreciate that. There are still good people out there who appreciate the work that we do.
And getting back to help the people that you form relationships with after jobs, it does happen, and it's. I think that if you give them a little bit of time and you listen to their problems, that they can accept what happened to them easier than if you weren't to show that response to them. So it's just about being human, just interacting, showing empathy, just doing everything you can. And that's where you do make those friends. You just form those bonds because, you just gotta care and put yourself in their position. And I think that's important for us because it makes your job worthwhile, makes you want to keep going back because you get that interaction. And going back to friendships that you formed, we formed, I can say this on behalf of Hoppy as well, we formed friends through other emergency services because we work so close together for the same types of jobs. And we have one another's backs a majority of the time. And I'm talking from a rural country sort of aspect. It might be different in the city where Blake is. I don't know how he interacts with other emergency services, but I know in regional New South Wales or regional areas that the most of the bonds you form are with other emergency services doing, not your job, but are directly linked.
And I've actually witnessed this firsthand, right? And how close in a country town all of the services are, because Matt set fire to his backyard once.
Yeah, I did.
And mate, there was fire brigade and everybody come to help. I don't know. I'm assuming they didn't send you a bill, but
No, because they were the last ones to the fireys were the last ones to touch my fire, so it was their fault.
And I won't tell a couple of other stories, but
I don't.
They are close, and it was nice to witness that. In that particular scenario, knowing you, Matt, I think that whole emergency team was from what I could see, very close down in regional areas, and it was nice to witness.
I'm glad to hear that there are friendships formed. I thought there would be. So I'm really sort of happy to to hear that. I've got another question. It's just bubbling in my head, and I don't know how much you can say or whatever. But what's the funniest situation you've been in on the job?
Now, I know there's a couple here. I just don't know which one's going to come forward.
Yeah, that's why I said you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. But what's the funniest? We hear about the doom and gloom, but what's the funniest?
Have you ever bogged a vehicle on a beach?
Look, we won't go there. I can. Well, I'll start then. It's been put out there. I was on restricted duties, not allowed out in the truck, and one of my colleagues said, "Well, come on, let's go for a drive on Wanda Beach." I said, "Yeah, I'll do that." And just so happened to be high tide, and we got halfway along between Kurnell and Wanda Beach, and the car sunk to its axle, and I thought, we are screwed. So we did our best, and fortunate we were able to get some traction, and we had to reverse this police car about 3 kilometres in the same tracks that we came in just to get traction. And as we got back to the police station, the boss had pulled up and saw us hosing all the sand out of his car. He goes, "Oh, good work washing the car now, boys, eh?" We said, "Yep, that's what we're doing." And I'll tell you, never did it again.
Well, Matt, I'll give you some info that happened yesterday, and you can use this for life with Topher. But we drove from Darwin to Dundee Beach yesterday.
Dundee Beach.
And there was a couple of scary moments where I thought maybe we're going to get bogged. But yeah, we went for a drive yesterday, a bit off road with the new car, and yeah, so nearly.
Yeah, and we've got a couple of racing stripes on the car now.
Yeah, it's quite fun. It's good.
What about yourself, Hoppy? You've got a...
Well, nothing particularly with me. I was just thinking of a comment one of you guys made last week that you crack jokes when things get serious, and that's the police culture all over. You have something that's, someone might have died or someone's been hurt, and you'll be out of the earshot of public. You'll be cracking jokes and stuff, because if you don't crack jokes, sometimes you cry. But I can't think of a funny thing ticking off the top of my head, but I've got an associated one that I'm aware of where this is about 30 years ago. There was a big old large sergeant up in the metropolitan area, and he had a habit of falling asleep when they were patrolling around. So the constable came back to the station, and he parked the truck right in front of the rescue truck, which was parked in the driveway of the police station. And he got out, and he's still asleep. So then they had a laugh about the station. So they've got into the rescue truck and put all the lights on and bipped the horn. And this guy, he woke up thinking he's about to have a head-on with the truck and shit himself, apparently. So
he was a sergeant. So, was he on light duties after that, or?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't personally know him, but
Blake, have you got something you want to share in it, Dodo?
Probably nothing that sort of matches these guys, but before we went digital with the radios, it used to be a bit of fun. For now, obviously, if you press a radio, our comms team know exactly who's talking. So back when I first started, we didn't have any of that. So you could just jump on the radio and say what you needed to say, and no one could identify you. So you normally hear a terrible job come in, a naked, 80-year-old woman running down the street, and you know that you've got another crew sitting at the station, so you just jump on and nominate their call sign. And all of a sudden they're getting called to go to the job. So I made a few friends that way.
Radio's always fun, aren't they?
Yeah.
Until you get,
Absolutely. Had it back tenfold.
Yeah.
Look, one thing I do want to understand, and as I said, we spoke to a wonderful lady the other day who is involved in police force around mental health. And there's been a couple of comments on this already, but do you feel it's improved? Over 30 years, Hoppy, I'd imagine surely it's improved the space of mental health in amongst emergency services. And if it hasn't, that's really sad.
I don't believe it has. In fact, it's sort of like the elephant in the room. like myself, I got through 33 years service before I fell off my perch and had enough, etc. like that. But I was very good at compartmentalising things and putting it behind. So busy, Matt and I were so busy down there together, and where we worked together, that you still hadn't finished the last job when you're on to the next job. So you were just so busy, and so I had hundreds of critical incidents over 33 years. But some people can just go to one thing, and that's enough, and that's where none of the new police. I'd like to get something. They don't get really prepared and told what they're going to see and told the reactions that I think they really need to have in all emergency services be told a real circumstances of the things they're going to see and the reactions they're going to get, and so they really know when they're going in, they're prepared for what they're going to see. Because you'd think they would know they'd see dead people, say, but it may not really strike all people when they, oh wow, I'm going to be an ambo or a fiery or a police officer, etc. I think
that's really interesting. That's a valid point too, right? Because people do perceive things differently. So, I've seen a number of suicides in throughout my career, and I'm probably similar where I can compartmentalise, and 48 hours later I've kind of moved on. But I know some colleagues that have worked with me that the first event that they see, that's it. They leave the industry and they can't do it anymore. And thinking back to one of the first incidences that I witnessed, it was probably a tick and flick exercise from HR as well. But I think for the industry I'm in, I think that space has moved quite a lot. So and we certainly don't attend stuff that you guys attend. So it seems that some corporations are quite prepared to develop that quite well, but the emergency services are still obviously lacking.
I don't think they want to go there because they may struggle to get people when people really know what they're going to be doing and seeing, etc. like that. Because you can say you're into a fatal accident and someone who's had nothing to do with it will have a idea in their head of what that entails, but really they've got no idea. From one accident can be totally different to the next, and it's hard for them to sort of imagine what they would actually be seeing and doing and having to.
You're right there, Hoppy, because you've got these TV shows like RBT, emergency services, and they glamorise all the stuff that we love to do. Like there's the funny stuff that we do, the routine stuff we do, and it's on the show, and they paint it out to be this exciting, glamorous job. And people are lining up to do it. And then when they get there, they go, hang on, I didn't sign up for that. Hang on, I've got to go to that. I don't want to do that. And you're right, people nowadays just aren't being, the right people aren't being selected. And then once those right people are being selected, they're not getting that support to help them through those troubled times.
So, Matt, you mentioned you've moved into an office role. So, I'm curious to see whether you think the office space is better at the mental health versus the frontline stuff.
Well, I'm directly involved with operational policing, and, I speak to the operational police every day about what they do. So I still hear about what they've gone through. I have to review what they've done. So I've still got to watch the body-worn video. I've still got to read what they've done. And that to me sometimes is, although I've gone to an office job, I still relive it. Do you know what I mean? I'll be reading something and I go, oh my God, I remember I did this job. I had a similar moment, and it brings back emotions. And there's been times where I've actually had to leave the desk and walk away and have a breather, because it's just sometimes these jobs that the uniform guys go to that you go, well, that's just too real for me at the moment, and I'll come back and read it later. Or I say, well, I'll put that aside. I just don't want to look at that.
Yeah, I think that makes a really good point that there's sort of triggers that you don't know exist until something actually triggers it. For me, for example, there's a certain type of female's perfume that when I smell it, I'm immediately taken back to the first time I went to the morgue. And I didn't know I had that until my sister turned up one day wearing it. And it was like I was, day one back in the morgue. So it's really hard to get on top of those triggers because a lot of them you don't know are there until it's too late. So that's just a really sort of good point that Matt made.
Well, Blake, you've been in two different emergency services. So do you feel there's a difference between police versus fire in how they handle mental health? Because both of them tend pretty tragic stuff.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe I'm getting old and my memory's starting to fade, but
not as old as Hoppy.
In the fireys, we we have the support networks and stuff like that. But you're working with the same people day in, day out, so you're working as part of the same crew. So they're like your brothers. So you really have a tight-knit a group of, say, 7 or 8 guys that you can sort of vent to and work through an incident with. Whereas the police, look, we're not there yet, I'll be honest. We don't take enough care of our guys and girls. And unfortunately, it shows, the burnout rate, the resignations are going through the roof. And it's unfortunate because it's a great job. But it's starting to get to a point where, because we're not managing people properly, I feel like it's just a job, not a career anymore. Probably my vision is that in 10 years' time, we won't have the guys like Hoppy who are doing 30-odd years in the job. It'll be something that people join, stay in for 5 or 10 years, see too much and just leave because we're not managing that properly. So, which is unfortunate because we lose a lot of experience in that.
Okay. Well, guys, look, I've really enjoyed chatting to you today. I think it's admirable, and I can't thank you enough for coming online and sharing a little bit of yourself and your journey and your experiences. And I hope that other people that are listening get a bit out of it. Just one last comment from you, Hoppy. Just where can people find some more information around Heart to Heart Walk? Because it is a great cause. And Chris doesn't know I'm going to mention this here. If you're open to sponsors, I'd be happy to throw some money your way personally from Novotel Darwin CBD and help your cause along.
But that'd be great. Yeah, like I said, we'll be doing fundraising along the way, and I'm going to chat to you about that later. But the information about it, there's both a Facebook page and a website, and there's a lot of websites with the word heart in it, so you've got to actually know what to look for. But if you search the heart number 2 heart walk, it generally is there somewhere amongst the suggestions, and you can go from there to find more information.
And of course, we'll share the links 100%. On our page and socials as well, because I really want to get behind that. It's a great cause.
Yep.
I did do a bit of reading on it, and some of the numbers are pretty tragic.
Yep.
The fact that the inquiry hasn't really progressed, I think it's really valid. And I know Matt is in training for it as well, and I'm sure he's looking forward to being convinced to join.
Still training.
We'll finish up there, and unless anyone has any closing comments.
I just wanted to make a quick comment as well. The whole idea about this podcast is to get people to be vulnerable and share their experiences. And for us, it doesn't get any better than this conversation we had today, because you guys are the front line out there and dealing with this stuff. And from my point of view, I just want to thank you all for coming on and sharing your stories. And I'm really looking forward to potentially even making episodes on each of you in the future, because I think there's enough there to have a chat and talk about. And I'm personally going to have a look at this stuff around the recommendations and then follow that up and keep people sort of updated on that. With the Heart to Heart Walk, we'll do a pop-up on our website pretty much straight away, because we don't know when this will go to air, so we'll sort of jump on that. And the last thing I'll just say is we've spoken about a few ideas for next year around what we're trying to do, and I'd love to get you guys involved in it. We'll let you know more details as it comes about, but it'll be some sort of event, a sporting event that we're going to do together and try and get everyone together. So from me, I always wanted to be a copper growing up as a kid. I wasn't tough enough to do it. I sort of looked into it. I just wasn't tough enough to be able to deal with it. That's why
if Matt could do it, anyone can do it.
That's exactly right.
But look, I have so much respect for emergency services across the board. I've got mates that are fireys as well, and a couple of police mates as well. So from me, I'm just so grateful that you guys can jump online and share this with us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Chris.
guys.
Thanks for giving the medium to do it.